It was an ordinary holiday morning, the kind where the sun seemed to promise a day filled with laughter and leisure. I stood in the hallway, coaxing my son Daniel to hurry up for his baseball game. That's when my world shattered. As I opened the door, I froze. Standing there like a ghost from a past life was Lucas, my husband who had vanished without a trace 3 years ago. "This is our home," he said, his voice a strange mix of confidence and hesitation. Before I could fully process his sudden return, another figure stepped out from behind him. Daisy, my sister-in-law. The sight of her sent a chill down my spine. She smiled that saccharine smile I remembered all too well. "We're here to take custody of Daniel," Daisy announced, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. Her words felt like a punch to the gut. For years, I had speculated about their disappearance. Lucas and Daisy vanishing on the same day couldn't have been a coincidence. But life had been relentless, leaving me with little time or resources to uncover the truth. Lost in thought, I barely registered Daniel's voice behind me. "Mom, who are you talking to?" I turned to see him, my brave little boy, staring curiously at the two strangers on the doorstep, unaware of the storm brewing. Daisy crouched slightly, her smile widening. "Oh, it's so nice to finally meet you. You're Daniel, right? I've wanted to meet you for so long." Her voice made my skin crawl. Behind her polished exterior lay the manipulative cruelty I had worked so hard to protect my family from. Daniel glanced at me, then back at them. "Dad? What are you doing here? And who is she?" His voice was tinged with confusion and anger. Before Lucas or Daisy could respond, Daniel stepped closer to me, his protective instincts kicking in. It was then that they noticed something behind me. Their expressions shifted, shock flickering across their faces. I turned to see my daughter, Emma, cradled in Daniel's arms. Lucas's gaze darted between Emma and me, his face pale with disbelief. "Lucas. Daisy." I finally spoke, my voice steady despite the whirlwind inside me. 3 years ago, you disappeared without a word. I was left to pick up the pieces, to raise Daniel and face an unexpected pregnancy alone. I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. Daisy's eyes narrowed, but I wasn't finished. "I've fought too hard to build a life for my children. You have no right to walk back in here and destroy that." Their faces were a mix of shock and guilt. But guilt wasn't enough. "Please leave," I said firmly, shutting the door before they could respond. As I turned back to my children, Daniel looked at me with newfound respect. Emma, blissfully unaware, gurgled in his arms. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. This was just the beginning. The days that followed were a blur of emotions and memories. The tidal wave of Lucas's sudden return threatened to pull me under, dredging up the dark days after his disappearance, the sleepless nights, the endless questions, the moments I doubted my own strength. Daniel had suffered the most. Once a cheerful, outgoing boy, he had retreated into himself. I remembered the dinners he refused to eat, the school events he begged me to skip, and the way his warm smile had faded. But then came Emma, my unexpected blessing. Her birth had been a turning point, a moment of vulnerability and strength that forced me to move forward. One night, as I tucked Daniel into bed, he turned to me, his young face serious. "Mom, why did Dad leave us? Did we do something wrong?" His words hit me like a blow. "No, honey," I said, brushing his hair gently. "You did nothing wrong. Sometimes adults make choices that don't make sense, but it's never because of anything you did." He frowned. "Then why did he come back? And with Aunt Daisy?" I sighed, searching for the right words. "I don't know why they came back, but I do know this, we're a family. You, me, and Emma. And we'll get through this together." He nodded slowly. "I trust you, Mom. I just wish things could be like they were before." "I know, sweetheart," I whispered, kissing his forehead. "I wish that too." The next day, a call from my lawyer, Mr. David Grace, jolted me back to reality. "We need to discuss your legal options," he said. "Lucas and Daisy's claim is baseless, but we'll need to prepare a case." This was my chance to fight back. "Let's do it," I said firmly. "I'm not letting them hurt my children again." "You're making the right decision," Mr. Grace assured me. The battle lines were drawn. And this time, I was ready to fight, for Daniel, for Emma, and for the future we deserved. I hung up the phone with Mr. David, my lawyer, a sense of determination settling over me. Lucas and Daisy had underestimated me, believing I would crumble under their pressure. They were wrong. I was no longer the woman they had left behind. I had faced trials that tempered me into someone stronger. Looking at Daniel playing with Emma, I knew I would do whatever it took to protect my children. This wasn't about revenge anymore, it was about justice for my family and the life I had rebuilt. As the days passed, my resolve hardened. I was ready for the legal battle ahead, but nothing could have prepared me for the emotional warfare that followed. Lucas and Daisy, like vultures circling their prey, began a campaign to wear me down. One afternoon, as I picked Daniel up from school, they were waiting, their presence like a storm cloud blotting out the sunny day. Daisy called out to Daniel, her voice coated with syrupy sweetness. "Hi, sweetie. We've missed you so much." Daniel clung to my hand, his small body tense. "Why are you here?" he asked, his voice barely audible. Lucas stepped forward, trying to look concerned. "We just wanted to see you, son. We're your family too, you know." Anger surged through me. "You lost the right to call yourself his family when you abandoned him," I snapped, pulling Daniel closer. Daisy's expression darkened, her facade slipping. "Grace, you can't keep him from us. We have rights." "You have no rights here," I said coldly. "You made your choice 3 years ago. Now live with it." Lucas's face twisted with anger. "You think you're so perfect, Grace? You're just a bitter woman who couldn't keep her husband happy." I felt Daniel's grip tighten, his small hand trembling in mine. "Let's go, Daniel," I said, turning to leave. As we walked away, Daisy's parting words cut through the air like a blade. "You'll regret this, Grace. We always get what we want." That night, as I lay in bed, their threats echoed in my mind. The thought of losing Daniel to those two was unbearable. I couldn't let it happen. The next morning, I met with Mr. David, my determination unshaken. "I want full custody of Daniel," I said firmly, "and I want Lucas and Daisy to have no visitation rights." Mr. David nodded. "It's going to be a tough battle, but I believe we can win. You're a good mother, Grace. The court will see that." As the legal preparations continued, I found an unexpected ally in Daniel. One evening, he approached me, his young face serious. "Mom, I want to tell the judge I want to stay with you," he said. "Dad and Aunt Daisy, they're not my family." "Not really." Tears welled in my eyes as I hugged him tightly. "Thank you, Daniel. That means more to me than you'll ever know." The day of the court hearing arrived like a storm on the horizon. I walked into the courtroom with Daniel by my side, ready to fight for our future. Daisy tried to portray herself as the caring aunt, her words dripping with insincerity. Lucas played the role of the repentant father, but his eyes betrayed his cold, calculating nature. When Daniel spoke, his voice was clear and unwavering. "I want to stay with my mom. She's been there for me when no one else was." The judge's decision came like a ray of sunlight piercing through the storm clouds. Full custody was granted to me, with no visitation rights for Lucas and Daisy. As we left the courtroom, Lucas's face was a mask of rage, and Daisy's eyes burned with malice. But none of it mattered. We had won. The victory brought a temporary sense of peace, but it didn't last long. Lucas and Daisy, like wounded animals, grew desperate and dangerous. They launched a slanderous campaign, spreading lies about me in the community. One evening, Daniel came home from school, his eyes brimming with unshed tears. Mom, kids at school are saying you stole me from Dad. That you're keeping me away from him because you're mean. My heart broke at his words. Daniel, you know that's not true. Everything I've done has been to protect you and Emma. He nodded, but the doubt lingered in his eyes. I know, Mom, but it's hard. They don't understand. I hugged him tightly, feeling his small body tremble. I know it's hard, sweetheart, but we'll get through this. We're stronger than their lies. The rumors only grew more vicious. Daisy had always been cunning, and now she wielded her words like weapons. One day, Lucas showed up at my workplace, his face a mask of feigned remorse. Grace, can't we just talk about this? For Daniel's sake, he asked. There's nothing to talk about, Lucas, I said, my voice steady. You made your choice. Now live with it. He grabbed my arm, his grip tight. You're ruining my life, Grace. You and that kid. I pulled away, glaring at him. No, Lucas. You ruined your life all by yourself. As I walked away, his parting words sent a chill down my spine. This isn't over, Grace. I won't give up that easily. The legal victory had given me custody of Daniel, but I knew this was far from over. Lucas and Daisy were determined to fight dirty, but I would stand my ground. For Daniel. For Emma. For the family we had built out of their betrayal. The battle with Lucas and Daisy hadn't ended. They were relentless, and the toll it was taking on Daniel became increasingly evident. He was caught in the middle of a conflict he couldn't fully understand, torn between a biological father who had failed him and a mother who had always stood by his side. One night, Daniel came to me, his face etched with uncertainty. Mom, what if Dad changes? What if he wants to be a real dad? His words hit me like a wave. I knelt down to meet his gaze. Daniel, I know he's your dad, and it's normal to hope for that. But we have to see people for who they are, not who we want them to be. He was silent for a moment, then looked up at me, his eyes clear but filled with longing. I know. I just wish things were different. I held him close, whispering, I do too, Daniel. I do too. Despite the ongoing battle, my focus had to remain on Daniel and Emma. They were my strength, the reason I fought so hard. I was determined to give them the life they deserved, a life free from the shadows of Lucas and Daisy's deceit. Lucas and Daisy's campaign of harassment escalated, becoming a near-constant presence in our lives. They loitered outside my workplace and lingered near Daniel's school, their watchful eyes like a siege on our sanity. I could feel their malice everywhere, but I refused to let their intimidation break me. It was time to act. I met with Mr. David, my lawyer, my resolve steeled. We need to take more aggressive legal action, I said. I want to file for a restraining order against Lucas and Daisy, and I want to sue them for harassment and defamation. Mr. David nodded, his expression grim but determined. That's a wise decision. Their behavior is unacceptable, and it's time they face legal repercussions. The legal proceedings were grueling. Lucas played the victim in court, painting himself as a man wronged by a vengeful ex-wife. Daisy, ever the actress, wept dramatically about being kept away from her beloved nephew. But their theatrics couldn't hide the truth. The judge saw through their facade, granting the restraining order and ordering them to pay damages for their defamatory actions. Outside the courtroom, Lucas's face was a storm of fury, while Daisy's eyes burned with unspoken threats. But this time, I wasn't afraid. The law was on my side. Their defeat in court, however, didn't end their vendetta. If anything, it seemed to fuel their hatred. One day, I received a chilling phone call. Lucas's voice hissed through the line. You think you've won, Grace? You think you can destroy my life and walk away? I'll make sure you regret this. I clenched the phone, forcing my voice to stay steady. You brought this on yourself, Lucas. I'm just protecting my family. You haven't seen the last of me, he spat. This isn't over. The threat hung in the air like a toxic cloud, but I refused to let it break me. My children were my world, and I would do whatever it took to shield them from Lucas and Daisy's malice. Still, as the weeks wore on, the stress became unbearable. The constant vigilance, the fear of what Lucas might do next, and the overwhelming pressure of being a single mother, it was consuming me. One evening, Daniel came to me, his expression somber. "Mom, are we going to be okay?" Dad sounded really mad on the phone. I pulled him into a hug, my heart breaking for the worry he carried. "We're going to be okay, Daniel. I won't let anything happen to us. I promise." But even as I reassured him, I knew the battle wasn't over. Lucas and Daisy were like a storm on the horizon, and I had to be ready for whatever came next. For a while, their silence was unnerving. Bound by the restraining order, they seemed to retreat into the shadows, but I knew it was only the calm before another storm. Then, one day, Daisy re-emerged with a desperate and reckless move. While I was at the grocery store, she appeared out of nowhere, screaming accusations. "You're a monster, Grace. You've torn our family apart," she wailed, her voice drawing the attention of everyone around us. I stood my ground, my voice steady and firm. "Daisy, you need to leave. You're violating the restraining order." Her face twisted in rage. "I don't care. The world needs to see what kind of person you really are." Her theatrics backfired. The store manager, recognizing the disturbance, called the police. As the officers escorted a hysterical Daisy out of the store, her carefully crafted image of the wronged aunt crumbled. This public meltdown became her undoing. The police charged her with violating the restraining order and causing a public disturbance. It was a small but meaningful victory, a step toward reclaiming the peace my family so desperately needed. Even as the storm raged, I held on to the hope that one day, it would pass. Until then, I would continue to fight, for Daniel, for Emma, and for the life we deserved. Lucas finally faced the consequences of his actions. His role in the harassment and defamation was undeniable, leading to his arrest. Watching him being taken away alongside Daisy, I felt a brief pang of pity. They had created their own downfall, trapped in a pit of lies and hatred they had dug themselves. But this fleeting emotion was overshadowed by a profound sense of justice. At last, they were being held accountable. In the aftermath, the truth about Lucas and Daisy's deceit spread through the community. The rumors and judgments that had once isolated us began to fade. People who had whispered behind my back now approached with apologies and offers of support. Daniel, grappling with conflicting emotions, came to me one evening. "Mom, is it wrong to feel happy about Dad and Aunt Daisy getting arrested?" I knelt beside him, taking his hand. "It's not wrong, Daniel. They hurt us deeply, and it's okay to feel relief that justice was served. It's normal to want things to be fair." For the first time in what felt like forever, the battle that had consumed our lives seemed to be over. Lucas and Daisy, once looming figures of intimidation, were now powerless to harm us. That night, as I tucked Daniel and Emma into bed, a sense of peace filled the house. We had survived the storm and emerged stronger. Though life would continue to present challenges, for the first time in years, I felt hopeful about the future. With Lucas and Daisy held accountable, the heavy burden we had carried began to lift. Our home was filled with laughter again. Daniel's smile returned, and Emma's innocent giggles warmed my heart. The community's renewed support made rebuilding our lives easier. Apologies turned into kind gestures, and the whispers that once followed us were replaced by words of encouragement. On my birthday, a moment of pure joy came from Daniel. Shyly, he handed me a small gift. "Happy birthday, Mom. I made this for you at school," he said, holding out a handmade photo frame. Inside was a picture of the three of us, smiling and happy. Tears filled my eyes as I hugged him tightly. "Thank you, Daniel. This is the best gift I could ever ask for." Later that day, we celebrated with a small party. Friends and neighbors joined us, their presence a testament to the new life we were creating. Our home felt whole again. Among the guests was Carter, a kind and supportive man I had met through work. During our darkest moments, he had been a steady source of encouragement, and his arrival at the party felt like a promise of new beginnings. "Happy birthday, Grace," he said warmly, handing me a small bouquet of flowers. "I hope this year brings you all the happiness you deserve." I smiled, feeling a spark of something I hadn't felt in years, hope. "Thank you, Carter. It's already off to a great start." As the party wound down, Daniel approached me, a thoughtful look on his face. "Mom, I've been thinking. Maybe it's okay to start new things, to be happy again." I knelt to his level, brushing a strand of hair from his face. "It's more than okay, Daniel. We've been through so much, and we deserve happiness." He smiled softly. "I like Carter. He's nice, and I think he makes you happy." I hugged him, my heart full. "He does, Daniel. And I'm glad you like him too." That night, as I tucked Daniel and Emma into bed, I reflected on how far we had come. We had faced our darkest moments and emerged stronger. The storm was behind us, and the calm ahead promised a future full of hope and joy. Life had tested us, but we had found our strength. Now it was time to embrace this new chapter and the bright dawn that awaited.